Hello students, this is chapter number 3, which talks about learning and human resources development. Remember in the previous chapter, chapter number 1, we said that learning is at the core of all HRD processes. So it's not unusual that there is a separate chapter dedicated for learning. In this chapter, we will talk about learning in general, the different theories in learning, and what can we do to make training more effective. Of course, as usual, we start with the learning objectives of your chapter. And now, here's an official definition of learning. It's a relatively permanent change in behavior, cognition, or affect that occurs as a result of one's interaction with the environment. As always, whenever you read any definition, try to find out what the keywords are. So it's a permanent change in behavior. Um, why does it occur? It occurs as a result of interaction with the environment. When you learn something new, what happens is that you change. When you learn that this is the way to drive a car, then your behavior permanently change. It is forever changed. You will never drive a car the old way again. You will always drive the car in this new way that you learned. It affects your behavior. It affects your cognition. So cognition, anything that is related to your mind, to your brain, to how you process information, how you interpret information, and even affect. So things like personality, things like attitudes, things like how you perceive things in the environment. So why did this change happen? Because you interacted, تفاعلت مع البيئة المحيطة حولك. You interacted with the environment around you. So again, here there's a breakdown of this definition. ناخذ التعريف اللي تعرفنا عليه قبل شوية ونفكه كذا حبة حبة. So first of all, there's a change. Why does this change happen? Where does it come from? It happens because you acquire something new. You obtain, تكتسب something new, or you modify something that already exists. So you either, when you learn something in your lectures here in JUC, sometimes you hear something for the very first time. You never heard it before in your previous courses or in your life. Or you had some information about it, but now we are telling you something different. كان طول حياتك تعتقد انه this is the way to do A, but now we are telling you no, there's a new better way in order to do this thing. So either acquire something new or modify something that already exists. من التعريف قلنا it's permanent. So here we say long lasting. It lasts for a very long time. صعب جدا انك انت تغير عادات شخص. صعب جدا انه انت تغير the concepts that are basically embedded in someone's head. So this is why learning is long lasting. And then behavior, cognition, and affect. So any combination of the three are the focus of learning. Sometimes we focus only on on teaching you certain behaviors. And sometimes we focus only on your cognition, on how you interpret and see information, or your affect, your personality, your attitudes and things like this. وأخيرا, of course, there's interaction with the environment. All this change in behavior, in cognition, in affect, and this long-lasting change, these all happen because you somehow interacted you interacted with the environment around you. So one important type of learning is called learning by association. Basically, when two cognitions become paired, so that thinking of one causes thinking of the other. When you associate two things together, This is one way of learning. It's called learning by association. Basically, learning by linking two concepts, two things, two situations together. So, what influences learning by association? First of all, we have something here called contiguity. Contiguity. Objects that are learned together tend to be associates with each other. So when you learn something and then something immediately happens right afterwards, you basically link the two things together. So if you for example tell a small child, a baby, that if you do your homework, I will give you candy. If you do your homework, I will give you candy. So immediately after this child finishes doing their homework, you give them candy. So now they link these two things together: doing homework and getting candy, something sweet, something that they like. So things that are learned together tend to be linked and associated with one another. And from that idea, we have something called the law of effect. So when you do something, so when you display a behavior, and then so behavior is like an action. When you do something and then immediately there's a pleasurable consequence, so a positive result. Pleasurable consequence, positive means positive result. So in the future, it is likely that you will repeat this behavior, you will repeat this action. For example, if you come to work very early, if you come to work very early and the supervisor sees you and tells you very good job, so he يمدحك السوبرفايزر أمام الآخرين. So now you did something, you did a behavior or an action which was coming to work early. ايش النتيجة؟ ايش اللي ترتب على الحدث هذا؟ The supervisor said good things about you in front of others. Okay, so now there is a positive result of what you did. So in the future you are likely to do this thing again. في المستقبل غالبا راح تيجي برضو للعمل بشكل مبكر جدا. ليش؟ لأنه تبغى تحصل على نفس النتيجة الإيجابية اللي حصلت لك هذه. The third thing here is practice. Of course, repetition strengthens association. When you keep enforcing this، لما تعود الطفل انه كل ما سوى حاجة كويسة تمدحه، كل ما سوى حاجة كويسة تعطيه مكافأة. When you keep practicing this kind of process, of course, this in their minds, this will strengthen that the two things are indeed associates of one another. Now, another type of learning called instructional psychology. Instructional psychology. It consists of four components. You have to describe, analyze, identify, assess, and monitor. What do you describe? You describe the learning goal to be obtained. زي ما عندنا في كل chapter, there is always the learning objectives. So before you start the learning process, you have to describe what is the learning goal to the people that you are teaching. You have to tell them, why are we learning this? What are we going to achieve by doing this? And then you have to do some analysis. You have to analyze the initial state of the learner. What are you going to do? You are going to examine what do they already know? What are their abilities? What are their skills? So that you ensure that you are giving them training that is suitable, مناسب for their level. Then you have to identify the conditions that allow the learners to achieve competence. Remember, we discussed competency in the previous chapter, chapter number 1. We said it's not only a skill, it's reaching the level when you are a master of a certain skill. So here, what are we going to do? We are going to make sure that we know what conditions make you become a master of a certain skill, a master of a certain competency. So in order for us to teach you, for example, how to swim, to teach you how to swim, this is something new that you will learn. So we need to first know ايش مواصفات المسبح، ايش الظروف اللي تساعدك انك انت تخليك تتعلم المهارة هذه بشكل جيد. Do you do well in front of others، ولا افضل لو احنا نعلمك in private من غير ما احد ثاني يشوفك. So these are the things that we do in this particular point. And finally, we assess, evaluate and monitor learning to measure progress and need for alternative means other techniques. So after we have done all of this, of course it doesn't stop here. We always make evaluation. We go back and see what did we do right, what did we do wrong, what can we do in order to improve the overall process, can we teach you in a different way. And then this is what is known as instructional psychology. So to maximize learning, make the best use of learning, we have to focus on three primary areas: trainee characteristics, training design, and of course the transfer of training. When we talk about trainee characteristics, now we focus on the learners themselves. So as a teacher, as a lecturer, as a professor, I have to look into you. You are the trainees, you are the learners, you are the students. So what qualities you should have that will help me be a better trainer, that will help the learning overall becomes more effective and more efficient. And of course we have to look into the design of the training itself, and definitely we will discuss something here called transfer of training in a couple of minutes. So since we are talking about trainee characteristics, when we talk about the characteristics, the qualities of trainees, we are basically thinking of how trainable they are, trainability. To which extent I can train you, to which extent are you susceptible of training. هل انت شخص اصلا قابل للتدريب، قابل للتعليم ولا لا. And then of course we have to talk about motivation. Are you motivated enough to learn? Are you motivated enough to learn? And then your abilities, قدراتك. صعب جدا. This is why we have to do a lot of work before the training, before the learning begins. What abilities do you have؟ صعب جدا ان اجي اعلمك انا مثلا مهارات السباحه وانت شخص مثلا عندك اعاقه بدنيه. صعب جدا ان اجي اعلمك مثلا advanced mathematics وانت ما عندك مبادئ الماثematics. So of course we have to look into what you already know, what you can do as a person, as a human being. And then of course the perception of the work environment is definitely going to affect the effectiveness of training. How you perceive your work، كيف الأشخاص ينظرون إلى بيئة العمل وإلى العمل بشكل عام. And of course الشخصية والسلوك، personality and attitudes. Of course these things are major influencers of how effective and how efficient the overall learning intervention is going to be. Now we will focus a little bit more on motivation. So when we talk about motivation, something that happens when we say pre-training motivation, pre-training means before training. So how the trainees perceive, how do they see training affecting their levels of learning, the perceptions of efficacy, anxiety, and perceptions of fairness. طبعا, of course, before we begin learning, remember we are still talking about trainee characteristics. So your qualities as a trainee, your خصائصك ومميزاتك وصفاتك انت كمتدرب كمتعلم, as a learner, as a trainee. So how you see, how you perceive, what do you think about yourself. بعض الناس ثقته في نفسه تخليه ما يتعلم بشكل جيد. لا أنا ماني متعلم جيد. If you have that idea about yourself, then of course the learning is not going to be that much effective. And then the way individuals view their own ability is definitely going to affect anxiety, efficacy, and of course, learning of factual knowledge. So, how you think about your organization, how you think about the training itself, and how you think about yourself, your own self, all of those are going to affect the level of motivation that you have. إذا الشخص أصلا يعتقد إنه هو بيئة العمل عنده غير جيدة, of course, this is not going to be a good environment to facilitate training. إذا الشخص هذا يعتقد إنه الكورس التدريبي هذا كورس غير جيد, إيش فائدة الكورس هذا؟ If you already have this idea before we even begin the course, كيف راح نعلمك بشكل جيد؟ Of course, this training is not going to be very much effective. وطبعا, if you have this idea that I am so bad, I am not a good learner, أنا يا أخي قدراتي ضعيفة, أنا إنسان على قدي, أنا ما عندي المهارات المطلوبة. Of course, that idea about yourself, about your own ability is definitely going to influence and affect and actually inhibit. Inhibit means hinder, be like an obstacle. Of course, this idea is going to inhibit how effective training is going to be. وأخيرا, experiencing negative events on the job can increase the trainees' motivation to learn and their performance. العكس أحيانا ممكن يحصل when it comes to experiencing negative events. كيف هذا الكلام؟ So imagine that you were in a meeting. Imagine that you were in a meeting, and then because you have poor presentation skills, you have poor presentation skills, حصل انه المانجر اللي كان في الميتنج قال عنك كلام غير محبب. قال next time please do not do any presentation, let someone else do the presentation. وسمعك هذا الكلام in front of others. Of course, this is now a negative experience. الآن بسبب انه حصل لك هذه التجربة النيجاتيف, هذه التجربة السلبية, maybe now you will be actually more motivated to learn. أنا أبغى أتعلم أحسن بسبب الموقف السلبي اللي حصل لي in order to improve myself and show them how I improved. كثير من الناس اللي خسروا أوزان كان دافعهم هو تجربة سلبية حصلت معهم. أحد قال له يا دب, أحد قال له أنت إنسان مقزز, شكلك مش عارف إيش. بسبب النيجاتيف experience that they have had, now they actually their level of motivation increased so much. طيب, since we are still talking about pre-training motivation, we have just talked about perception, how you perceive yourself, your organization, the training itself. Now let's talk about some of these other factors. If you are involved in the decision to be trained, of course it is expected that you will be more motivated to learn. لما أصلا يعني فرق بين لما أجي أنا to include you in decision making, لما أجي أنا as your supervisor, as your manager, وأتكلم معاك إنه وأتناقش معاك إنه إيش تعتقد التريننج اللي أنت تحتاجه, غير لما فجأة يجيك إيميل يقول لك بكرة روح التريننج كورس الفلاني. Of course, the way this message is being communicated is going to affect how influential this training and how successful this training is going to be. Perception that the training would result in benefits. We touched already on this particular point in the previous slide. How whether you think or not, this training is actually going to be something that will benefit you for your career, for your own job, for your for overall. Of course, this is going to affect your level of motivation. Perception of support for training. إلى أي مدى أنت تشوف إنه في enough support in the organization. Support من مين? Support of course من supervisor and from the company as a whole. وأخيرا, lack of obstacles in applying training on the job. Lack of obstacles in applying training on the job. When you have the opportunity, when you have the chance to practice what you just learned in a certain course, to practice it in the actual work environment, definitely this is going to be more motivational for you during the learning experience itself. Now we move on to the second primary area, remember we had three primary areas. One was trainee characteristics, two is training design. So the design of the training, of course, going to influence and affect how successful training and learning in general is going to be. Basically, we have two major issues when it comes to training design. طبعا we have a separate chapter actually for design, but here we are talking about the general guidelines. So in here we talk about the conditions of practice. The conditions of practice, and the second thing is the retention of what you just learned. So retention means remembering things. So it's not only about teaching you something and then you go out of the course and you forget it. We want you to remember this for as long as possible. Of course, there are things that influence both. When it comes to conditions of practice, زي ما قلنا in the previous part, do you think what you are learning right now in a training course is something that you will be able to apply in your job? طيب, in order for this to happen, we have to look into things like active practice, massed versus spaced practice, and so on. And this is explained in the next slide actually in more detail. So when we talk about conditions of practice, we start with active practice. What do we mean by active practice? We talk about repeatedly performing the task or using the knowledge learned. So you are actively practicing the things that you just learned. Now, another issue is massed versus spaced learning sessions. زي ما جبنا مثال انه كيف الشخص اللي لما يجي يذاكر اولا باول، كل يوم يذاكر شابتر واحد فقط، غير الشخص اللي يحشر كل الشباتر ويذاكرها فقط ليلة الاختبار. So massed هذا الشخص اللي يحشر كل شيء في جلسة واحدة in one session, cramming everything and doing it all at once, or spaced هذا الشخص اللي ياخذ وقته كل يوم كل اسبوع يراجع له chapter او غيره. So this is the exact same concept when we talk about practicing things that you have learned in a training course and practicing them in the actual work environment. And then of course whole versus part. Whole versus part. Whole شيء الكامل. So لما تجي and you practice the entire task from A to Z. لما نجي أقول لك مثلا خطوات توظيف الأشخاص الجدد في شركة سابق 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, and then whole practice means, or whole learning is when you do all these steps. انت نخليك تسوي كل المهمة هذه من بدايتها إلى نهايتها. لكن part learning تأخذ واحدة فقط من الخطوات وتركز عليها. واحدة فقط من الخطوات وتركز عليها. مثلا في التوظيف، موضوع التوظيف بالذات نخليك تسوي موضوع to practice or learn only about interviews for example. نخليك تتدرب على الانترفيوز فترة، بعدين نخليك تتدرب على قراءة السي فيز فترة. So this is whole versus part learning. Now something else in the same area of conditions for practice, which is called overlearning. So when you overdo something, you are doing it too much. But when in learning, actually, we say that there is no such thing as overlearning. The more you learn and the more you practice something is actually very good for you. يعني ما في لاعبين الكرة مثلا ما في شيء راح يقول المدرب ما راح يقول لهم يا أخي أنتم قاعدين تتمرنون أكثر من اللازم. لا، تمرين مهم جدا. as long as you practice as much as possible, this will actually improve your performance. So practice beyond the point at which material or task is mastered. حتى لو أنت صرت من أفضل الناس في مهارة معينة, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't practice anymore. No, you should still practice. لاعبين الكرة المشهورين جدا ما زالوا يمارسون مهارات الكرة الأساسية. حافظة القرآن الكريم اللي حافظ القرآن من أكثر من 10 سنوات ما زال يراجع حفظه حتى لقصار السور بشكل دوري. So of course practicing is always important. Now what is the rationale for overlearning? Rationale means what is the justification, what is the reasoning behind overlearning? It says that overlearning may improve performance under different situations. May improve performance under different situations. لما تتعلم الشغلة over and over and you practice it over and over again. This is not only going to make you the best in it, this will make you perform it under different situations in a very good way. And then it helps you when it comes to additional proactive when opportunity for same not available on the job. What does that mean? It means that when the conditions under which you learned something in a training course are different from the conditions of your actual job, you will still not forget this new skill or not forget this new knowledge. It makes what is learned automatic in stressful or emergency situations. أحيانا الشخص ياخذ مثلا كورس في الإسعافات الأولية ويحصل قدامه شخص انهار حصل له إغماء بسبب even though you are good at first aid, you know CPR, you know all of those techniques that you should do, لكن because sometimes you are stressed. هذا الشخص مثلا اللي طاح هو زوجتك أو صديقك المقرب، فأنت أصلا already خايف عليه جدا. because of this fear you are unable to do what you learn. لكن when you overlearn, when you practice things so much, regardless of how stressful the situation is or how afraid you are, you will still perform it in a very good way. And finally, overlearning is effective, but of course increases time and expense of training. It's we as an organization we always look at things as an expense. ما في شيء بلاش. Everything means a cost for the organization. We must ensure that you have the opportunity to practice, but at the same time we must ensure that we are not spending so much money. Now moving on to a different factor, which is a very important one actually, and that is feedback in training. How will you ever know whether you actually did the task right if you didn't receive any feedback? How will you ever know that what you are doing is actually good, that what you are doing is actually correct? And how will you ever know whether or not you can improve your performance, and how you can improve your performance if you didn't receive any comments, if you didn't receive any feedback on your performance? So feedback provides objective information regarding the adequacy of one's performance. How well did you perform? Were you good? Were you not good? What was good? What wasn't good? And what can you do to improve yourself? And feedback can come from observers, can come from the performer, him or herself, or can come from the task itself. So there are multiple parties, multiple aspects, multiple sources where you can receive feedback. Feedback can either be informational or motivational. Informational in the sense that it provides you with the information on how you can do something correctly, how you can do the task in the right way. So it gives you that factual information. This is the right way to do this thing. Or the purpose of feedback can be basically to increase or improve your motivation, to provide you with some motivation in order to help you learn better. It indicates valued outcomes. And then the second major aspect in this particular area, and this was retention. Remember, we talked about conditions of practice, and now we talk about retention. Retention meaning remembering what you have learned, remembering what you have learned for a very long time. So what can influence retention? Meaningfulness of material, this is number one. Of course, when the material are more meaningful, they mean something to you, they are significant, they are important, you can relate to the concepts, to the materials, to the theories that you are studying, this will be more easier for you not only to learn but also to remember for a very long time. The second issue is the degree of original learning. So what we are focusing on over here is that when the training itself, when the learning experience itself is done in an effective way, is done in an interesting way, is done in a way that helps you be more successful. This will help you remember things more often. This will help you not forget things quickly. And then finally, interference, التدخلات. So things that sometimes happen before or after the training. What is mentioned over here is that knowledge gained before training can inhibit retention, can make retention worse. So some of the things that you have, some of like the preconceived ideas that you have, or some of the information that you have came across before you actually go for the training experience itself, can indeed influence how much you retain, how much you remember after the training. And then of course the knowledge that you gain after the training can definitely also inhibit, can make retention worse. Basically what this means is that you learn something, you study something, and then before you study this particular subject, you have some information about it before you study it. This information can sometimes make remembering things more difficult. أخذت الtraining course and then you gain some further knowledge about the same subject. هذه النولج الجديدة اللي أخذتها راح تأثر على how much you remember from the training course. You see? And then of course both require learner to respond differently in the same general situation due to changed equipment, changed procedures, etc. تعلمت إن أخذت عندك معلومات إنه هذه هي الطريقة الصحيحة لإدارة الموظفين. أرسلناك لتريننج كورس، تعلمت فيها أشياء جديدة. المعلومات اللي أنت already كانت عندك قبل الكورس of course is going to influence how much you remember. خلصت التريننج كورس، رجعت للعمل. now you gain more information. تتكلم مع supervisor، تتكلم مع manager، تحضر دورة أخرى. it gives you other information than the things that you have studied in your training course. This is definitely going to affect how much you remember and for how long you remember it. تغيرت النظريات. واحد تعلم مثلا مايكروسوفت اوفيس 2010، جاء الان مايكروسوفت اوفيس 2016، تغيرت الاشياء. of course now you have to respond differently, and of course how you remember and how much you remember is going to be influenced. Now transfer of training. تذكروا يا شباب that when we talk about transfer of training, we are not talking about the transfer of knowledge from my head to your head, from the trainer's mind to the trainee's mind. When we talk about transfer of training, we talk about the transfer of new knowledge from the training experience, from the training scenario, from the training course into the workplace. So transfer of training for you, لكم انتم بالذات يا شباب, it means what you learn now in the classroom, you transfer it when you go for your co-op in سابق ولا معادن ولا الهيئة الملكية ولا غيره. Okay, so transfer of what you learn from the training experience, from the training course into the work environment, into the workplace. So transfer can be positive or it can be negative. كيف يكون positive? When job performance improves because of training. Of course, when you gain some new knowledge, when you develop some new skills because of the training, and then your performance on the job becomes better. وهذا أصلا الهدف from sending you to training. الهدف إنه to improve your performance. Now this is positive. لكن أحيانا يصير العكس. أرسلناك لتريننج، ترجع الشركة, your performance becomes worse. Now we call this negative transfer. Transfer of training is impacted and influenced by a variety of factors. One of them, and like at the top of the list, is of course identical elements. Identical means exactly the same. عشان كذا الشركات الجيدة مثل سابق وغيرها, when they send their employees for training, they agree with the trainers, they agree with the training vendor, with the training institution, إنه أعطوهم أشياء مشابهة جدا لبيئة العمل. Why? So that when they come back they can apply it without any problems. Another factor is general principles. صعب جدا لما تعطي أشياء very much specific. You leave no room, no area for transfer. When I give you something very specific, this is how they do things in the company called 3M in the United States. This is the best way to do HR, is the way this company does it. ترجع لسابق مختلفة البيئة. You cannot do anything. لكن what we should give you, like what we are giving you here now in college, is only general principles. So you get the core idea and then you can apply it at any situation. Stimulus variability. Stimulus is the something that pushes you, that motivated you, that motivates you in order to do something. So there is a variety of the things that motivate you in order to transfer the knowledge from the training course into the work environment. Of course, the support that you get in the training, in the work environment, is going to also influence transfer of training. قلنا support from mean, from the supervisor, and from the organization as a whole. وطبعا opportunity to perform. Opportunity to perform. السبب الأول والسبب الرئيسي اللي reported in research and in some books why transfer of training fails, انه there is no opportunity to perform. اعطي موظفينك ومتدربينك الفرصة to practice what they learned in the training courses that you send them for. And finally, the transfer of training climate, الجو العام في الشركة. Is there a general policy? Is there like the relationships, the tolerance for making errors? All these things, the general climate for transfer of training is definitely conducive and facilitative or not of applying these new learned skills and abilities. Now we shift gears to talk about individual difference in learning. الأشخاص مختلفين in terms of their skills, their abilities, مواهبهم, قدراتهم, طبيعتهم, شخصياتهم. So of course they learn differently. في أشخاص يتعلمون من مرة واحدة. يقرأ المعلومة أو يعطى المعلومة مرة واحدة and they learn it and they can easily apply it. في أشخاص لازم تكرر عليه المعلومة أكثر من مرة. في أشخاص يتعلمون بستايل معين، في أشخاص يتعلمون بستايلات مختلفة. So of course individuals are different in terms of their learning. One way they are different is the rate of progress. People learn at different rates. زي ما قلنا, sometimes people learn very quickly and sometimes people need to take their time in order to process information. To that purpose, there's an interesting concept and tool called the learning curve. It's basically a chart. It gives you or shows you the relationship between improvement and time. So it's charting individual proficiency against time. مع مرور الوقت هل أنت تتحسن في الأداء أو لا؟ And we will see some examples in the next slide. And the learning curve من الأشياء اللي يفيدك فيها is it provides you with feedback for altering approaches according to individual needs. لما تعرف انه عندك اغلب الكلاس يتعلم يعني الريت حقهم في التعلم ممتاز, لكن you have one or two people who need more attention, تستخدم learning curve هذا in order to find out where can you improve. Now this is the learning curve. These are examples of the learning curve. لاحظوا يقيس العلاقة بين شيئين, proficiency and time. proficiency and time. فلو تلاحظون الأشكال اللي موجودة sometimes proficiency improves with time. The more time is spent on learning, the more proficient, the better you become. اوكي. واحيانا لاحظوا بعض الناس يكون في البدايه يعني يطلع مباشره، كل ما امضى وقت زياده في التعلم كل ما زاد الefficiency and the proficiency in learning. Some other people are different. يبدأ في البداية كويس، يتعلم أكثر يتعلم أكثر يتعلم أكثر، لكن بعدين يصير ثابت خلاص، حتى لو أمضى ساعات أطول في المذاكرة وفي غيره ما راح يتعلم أكثر. بعضهم في البداية ينزل وبعدين يطلع، بعضهم في البداية يطلع بعدين ينزل. So it's individual difference. It's an individual difference. This shows you how people are different. Now, child versus adult learning. Of course, children are different from adults when it comes to learning. ذكرنا in the previous chapter how, for example, the way you train regular employees should be different from the way you train managers and supervisors. For of course, when you teach children, you will use certain theories and certain techniques and styles, and of course when you teach adults you will use different ones. So in here, and this actually could be a big question in your exam, what are the differences between adults and children in terms of learning? Adults are more self-directed. Adults are more self-directed. They direct themselves. ما يحتاج واحد واقف على راسه ويقعد يقول له سوي افعل. لكن children, they need more direction. Okay. Now the second point is that adults have acquired a large amount of knowledge and experience that can be tapped as a source, as a resource for learning. Adults already have previous experiences, سواء work experiences ولا they already have degrees. Okay, so أحيانا لما تجي تبغى تقرب المعلومة للأشخاص تقول لهم مثلا كمثال، مين مر عليه في بيئة العمل موقف سلبي مع السوبرفايزر؟ كثير ناس راح يشاركك بعض الأمثلة، لكن you cannot do this with children. You cannot do this with children because they don't have previous experiences. Okay, and then the third point is adults show a greater readiness to learn tasks that are relevant to the roles they have assumed in life. In general, adults are more ready to learn because they are already playing some of these roles. When you teach, you will find that adults, for example, are more willing and more ready to learn about leadership. Why? Because either they are already leaders in their work environment, who are already manager or team leader, أو هو leader in their personal life. They are the ones who lead a family. هو الأخ الأكبر، هو رب البيت، رب الأسرة. So, but when it comes to children, they do not have that similarity. Okay. And then the fourth point is that adults are motivated to learn in order to solve problems or address needs, and they expect to immediately apply what they learn to these problems and needs. Children do not have this issue. Children do not have these personal problems. ما عنده مشاكل as significant as the problems that adults are facing. So this is why adults will be more motivated. انت تبغى تتعلم how to become a better leader لانه تبغى تاخذ ترقية، لكن for children they don't care about these things. So these are some of the ways in which adults are different from children in terms of learning. Now, a very interesting concept, Kolb's learning style. This is an expert in the area of HRD and learning in general. Kolb أعطانا different styles and different modes for learning. So a learning style represents how individual choices are made during the learning process and how they affect what information is selected and how it is processed. Basically what this means is that زي ما قلنا individuals are different. تكلمنا قبل شوية على learning curve. We have seen how individuals learn differently. هناك تكلمنا فقط على الريت، على سرعة التعلم if we compare it against time. Now we will talk about the ways they learn. لاحظ بعض الطلاب يحب الشرح المسموع، بعضهم يحب يقرأ، بعضهم يحب يطبق بنفسه. So these are exactly the things that we will discuss over here. How individuals are different when it comes to what methods they prefer. What methods they prefer. الأشخاص يختلفون in terms of how they process information. لما أنا تعطيني مثلا كلام مكتوب، أحصل نفسي أبدأ أمل، أحصل نفسي ما أفهم المعلومة بشكل سريع. لكن لما تخليني أمارسها، أطبقها، now I understand. I can actually process and understand this information much better and much more faster. Okay, so a mode of learning is the individual's orientation toward gathering and processing information during learning. So the mode is basically what you prefer, the method, let us say, of learning that you prefer. Okay, now we will talk about the methods of learning that individuals prefer. We just talked about, for example, in the learning curve, how individuals are different in terms of the rate at which they learn. السرعة اللي يتعلم فيها شخص. But now we will talk about the methods, the modes at which people learn. So we start with the concrete experience mode. Basically, in the concrete experience mode, people learn through direct experience, through emphasizing interpersonal relations and feeling as opposed to thinking. When we talk about concrete experience, we talk about experiencing the actual thing, actually living the situation itself, putting myself in that situation where I experience all of these theories and concepts and subjects that you are explaining. Okay, and then abstract conceptualization. This is one way of learning in which people prefer to learn things in terms of theory. So you don't put it in a specific situation, but you explain it in general. So these are the theories behind adult learning. These are the theories why this is the best way to motivate people. Okay, sometimes people understand and learn better if you explain things to them in theoretical terms, in terms of theory. And now the second set of modes is the reflective observation. It is one way people prefer to learn, which is by being presented with the different opinions, the different points of views about a certain subject, and then thinking about it, reflecting on it. You tell me that Sabik does this, Aramco does this, Ma'aden does this, and then you give me some room to think about all of these ideas and then developing my own understanding. So I prefer to learn by watching and examining the different points of views. And finally, active experimentation. Now this is called learning by doing. Learning by doing. People sometimes prefer to learn something by doing it and judging its practical value. Instead of telling me how to swim, just let me do it. Instead of telling me these are the questions that you should ask in an interview, now let me actually attend an interview and ask some of these questions. Okay? And then we talk about the different learning strategies. The different learning strategies, which are shortened here as LS, and they represent the behavior and the thoughts a learner engages in during learning. Basically, the learning strategies focus on what kind of techniques should be used for you as a learner and for me as a teacher in order to help learning becomes more effective. So the first one, the first set of categories of learning strategies include rehearsal strategies. Rehearsal means practicing, and practice involves repetition. So you repeat items in a list, you underline text in an article, you copy notes, you keep on practicing and rehearsing. This is one learning strategy. بعض الأشخاص لما يجي يذاكر للفاينل exam يحب يلخص كل الماتيريال. So this is part of rehearsal. And some teachers, when they teach certain subjects, they involve students in some activities like this. And then elaboration strategies. Elaboration strategies. So when you elaborate, you are expanding on the topic. Okay, so examples over here include forming a mental image. هذه يسموها الخرائط الذهنية, for example. Taking notes, paraphrasing. تعيد انت كتابة الموضوع بالكامل. Summarizing new material. Okay, so you expand on the topic. And then organizational strategies. Basically, when you are organizing things, you are putting them in a different order. So grouping or ordering information to be learned, outlining an article, or creating a hierarchy of material. تنظيم، إعادة تنظيم كل الماتيريال وكل الشابترز اللي درستها. اوكي، وتسوي تحطها في مجموعات وتسوي لها outline. Some teachers, they try to use some of these strategies in order to help their students. وأحيانا you as a learner on your own لحالك من غير ما حد يقول لك، تحب بعض الأشخاص يفضلون يستعملون الاستراتيجي هذه، الترتيب والتنظيم in order for them to understand and remember things better. Now, moving on to different strategies, we talk here about comprehension monitoring strategies. Comprehension basically means understanding. So in here you are using certain strategies to ensure do you understand the things that you have just studied or not. What is happening over here is that you want to check your understanding. So this is when you take like a self-quiz. You take questions and some exercises and exams to check whether or not you understood what you just studied. And then finally, you go with affective strategies. Affective strategies. When we talk about affect, we talk about personality, we talk about attitudes. So when we talk about affective strategies in terms of learning, here we talk about things like relaxation and fighting stress and anxiety. So المهارات اللي يستخدمها بعض الطلاب وبعض المدرسين يخليك تتغلب على الضغوط، يخليك تسترخي أفضل قبل البدء في الاختبار أو قبل البدء في المذاكرة. So these are some strategies that are used also for learning and actually very important ones. And then perceptual differences. تكلمنا على learning curve, how individuals are different in terms of the rate at which they learn, سرعة التعلم. تكلمنا على modes of learning, like the different methods that they prefer to use in order to learn. And now we will talk about perceptual preferences, what individuals prefer in terms of the things that they perceive. Okay, لعل بعضكم سمع مثلا عن كيف الأشخاص يختلفون، في الأشخاص الحسيين، في الأشخاص البصريين، والأشخاص السمعيين. So in here we actually focus exactly on this. Okay, how some people prefer to read and write, they like printed material, and how some people are visuals، أشخاص بصريين يبغى يشوف graphs و charts و infographics. This helps them learn more efficiently. And then how for example some people are oral, so it means that هذول الأشخاص السمعيين they like to listen to things. Okay, ما يحب القراءة، يحب أسمع. تحصل بعض الأشخاص ما يحب يقرأ كتاب لكن يحب يأخذ الكتب المسموعة يسمعها في السيارة. And then interactive, how sometimes people prefer to learn by discussing, by asking questions, by being involved in a situation where they get to ask and answer questions. And then how other individuals, for example, are more tactical. They are more manipulative. Basically, what this means is that they are preferring a more hands-on approach. هذول الأشخاص اللي يسموهم الحسيين. Okay, they like to actually do things by touching it, by making sure that they experience how it feels. And then finally, there's the psychomotor part. This means that some certain strategies like role playing. So they put themselves in that situation. Okay, they like to act out that role. So role playing means acting out. Imagine that you are a manager and this is an employee who is always late for work. How are you going to tell him that he should improve or he will be fired? So role playing or physical activities, things like management games, for example. وأخيرا, olfactory association of ideas with smell or taste. الأشخاص اللي they sometimes prefer to associate some other factors in terms of their learning. So even things like smell or taste are important to them. Now, the final probably idea that we will discuss in this chapter is exceptional performance. Exceptional means out of the ordinary, something extremely outstanding. Okay, so how can you reach that level? How can you reach that exceptional performance level? It comes through primarily under optimal environmental conditions, which means, so optimal means like in a perfect situation. In order to reach that level, first of all, the environment in which you are performing, the environment in which you are learning must be optimal, must be the very best. It helps you with your learning. It provides all the support that you need. Okay, and then it is acquired through deliberate practice. Deliberate practice. You are practicing and you keep on rehearsing and you are doing it in a conscious way. So you are deliberately, means on purpose. Okay. في أشخاص يقول لك يا أخي تمرنت كثير بس إلى الآن ما شفت نفسي تحسنت. إيش السبب؟ السبب إنه they are not doing it on a deliberate basis. Okay. في مثلا أحد الدراسات وجدت إنه if you want to be exceptional at something, تبغى توصل لدرجة الاحترافية لازم تمارسها لمدة 10,000 ساعة. 10,000 hours. Okay. And then exceptional performance requires sustaining a very high level of motivation. طبيعي جدا إذا أنت تبغى توصل إلى مرحلة أنك أنت تكون the best, of course you have to have a very high level of motivation. Otherwise, you will never be able to continue. So here's some expansion on that deliberate practice thing that we just talked about. It leads to anatomical and physiological adaptations that contribute to high levels of performance. يساعدك من الناحية حتى الجسدية in order to contribute to high levels of performance. The maximum practice time that a person can tolerate is 4 1-hour sessions per day, separated by periods of rest. لاحظوا مثلا كيف لما يكون الشخص عنده محاضرات طويلة جدا في اليوم الواحد صعب جدا انه هو يبدأ حتى يستوعب انه هو يحسن من أدائه ومن درجاته. لاحظ هنا مثلا المعلومة انه the maximum time اللي الشخص يقدر يستحمله هو 4 ساعات فقط. 4 ساعات فقط في اليوم، تخيل. وهذه ال4 ساعات مقسمة إلى جلسات متفرقة وبين كل جلسة وجلسة في بريك. So you need to take this thing into consideration. صعب جدا إنه أنت تبغى تجيب مثلا A+ في كورس وأنت قاعد تذاكر بشكل متواصل جدا 18 ساعات ورا بعض. This is why we always say it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's not about duration, it's about frequency. Okay, قليل دائم خير من كثير منقطع. And then expert performance is facilitated by planning, reasoning, and anticipation. Things are not done in a haphazard way بشكل كذا بدون تنسيق وبدون تخطيط بشكل اعتباطي. Things need to be planned. Things must be done in a way where you can understand it. And then experts are generally expert in a limited performance domain. ما في شخص expert في كل حاجة. الشخص تلقاه خبير في جزئية معينة. حتى خبير يقول لك أنا خبير في الموارد البشرية، ما تلقاه يعرف عن التوظيف وعن التدريب وعن الليرنينج وعن الديفلوبمنت وعن الاورجنايزيشنال ديفلوبمنت. تلقاه ممتاز جدا في جزئية التوظيف فقط. يعرف أشياء أخرى ممتازة، عنده معلومات جيدة عن other aspects، لكن when it comes to exceptional knowledge and exceptional performance they only learn about a very limited domain, a very limited area. And then finally, the age at which an individual can attain peak performance levels varies based on the domain of expertise. أحيانا يقول لك هل العمر علاقة في موضوع exceptional performance؟ Yes، لكن ما في rule of thumb. ما يقول لك في عمر 30 أو في عمر 20 أو في سن الطفولة يوصل الشخص إلى مرحلة إنه يصير خبير. They say it depends on the domain of expertise. It depends on the area, on the subject, on the topic itself. Now, here we have some of the categories that we will discuss that will help us understand more about learning. So each of these categories require a different set of conditions for maximizing learning, retention, and transfer. Okay? Now, the first category is declarative knowledge or verbal information. هذه جزئية من المعلومات. What do they involve? It involves the ability to state or declare something. Basically here we discuss facts or an idea. So declarative knowledge هنا تكلم لي مثلا على things that have happened already. أعطيني مثلا قانون العمل. Okay, so هذه قانون العمل is categorized as declarative knowledge. And then intellectual skills. So in here we talk about procedural knowledge. Okay, we talk about rules, concepts, procedures that we follow in order to accomplish tasks. Intellectual skills may be simple or complex. So intellectual skills are those type of that type of knowledge and information in which we talk about like the steps and the procedures that you need to follow and implement so that you accomplish something. خطوات. Okay. And then cognitive strategies. Whenever you hear the word cognitive, it means this is relevant to your mind. This has to do with the way you process information. تخيل إنه رأسك هو زي معالج الكمبيوتر. This is how you process information, how you process data. So the skills that are used to control learning, thinking, cognitive thinking, and remembering. Of course, cognitive strategies allow us to determine what procedural and verbal information we need to perform a task. Okay, so cognitive strategies. In here we talk about, for example, what kind of particular technique I should use in order to help Muhammad learn better. Okay, استخدم أنا ال cognitive strategies or what is sometimes called the strategic knowledge. And then we talk about attitudes. السلوك هذه شغلة تختلف من شخص إلى آخر. So of course how what you think about certain things, your attitude toward a certain topic, toward a certain subject, toward a certain individual even can definitely influence the learning experience overall. So internal states of mind that influence several behaviors that you choose. Attitude is a very important concept. in the field of HR in general. But since we are only focusing here on learning, of course attitudes are extremely important for learning. تكلمنا كيف في البداية مثلا when it comes to trainee readiness، كيف الشخص إذا هو يشوف إنه التريننج هذا مش مهم، وإنه التريننج هذا مجرد كلام فاضي ومضيعة وقت، حتى لو كان الكورس جدا رائع ما في فايدة، الشخص هذا ما راح يتعلم، ما راح يكتسب أي مهارة جديدة. وأخيرا the last slide in this chapter is motor skills. Motor skills are basically physical skills. This involves using your body. This involves practicing with your hands. This involves actually performing something. هنا لما نتكلم على كيف مثلا زملائكم في قسم الهندسة الميكانيكية يدخلون اللابات ويستعملون بعض المعدات. Okay, so things like writing, things like cooking, things like balancing or learning something to do in terms of sports. So this was our chapter. It was kind of a long one, لكن it is probably one of the most important chapters that we will cover in this semester. Thank you very much, and I'll see you inshallah in the next part.